Hey guys, so here is my last video for the day. So I know that this is like the second in line, but this is the last one that I choose to do, which is my favorite video. And the book I'm going to read for you during story time is called Freedom, a Timeless Lesson of Passover. So this is important to us as Catholics, and also this was picked out by my dad to read, for me to read. And my dad is Jewish. We know that Jesus was Jewish, and that after he introduced himself as the Son of God, we became Christians. So this particular story tells about Passover, which is the Last Supper. That was a Seder meal, and we'll talk about the Seder during the story. That was the meal that was celebrated by Jesus before he was taken away and crucified. So we should learn why he was at a Seder meal and why it was such an important thing for he and his disciples and his apostles to get around and to do. So we're going to start with this story. It's called Freedom, a Timeless Lesson of Passover. We sit around the Seder table and we all recline, leaning to the left a bit to drink 4 cups of wine. The youngest at the table asks, "Why don't we sit upright?" And we answer, "We are celebrating freedom here tonight." Now, when we celebrate freedom, why they're saying that here, and actually in many of the Bible stories, Jesus was also reclining with his apostles, because in a reclining pose, especially although it's hard when we're eating and we don't do that now, but it was a symbol of being relaxed. And if you were on edge and if you were worried and you weren't free, you wouldn't be relaxed. And so in order to celebrate their freedom, they would sit relaxed. Now the language over here on this page is Hebrew, which is the language of the Jews. And the original Old Testament was written in Hebrew. And so we can see here this beautiful language. It's actually read from right to left. From left to right, the opposite of us. So we would read like this, but they actually read like this, which is very interesting. Now, Mrs. Smith does not read Hebrew. My dad could probably read some of the Hebrew, but not most of it. You see, it is a privilege to sit, relax, and eat. For many people, one nice meal would be a special treat. Remember how the Jews in Egypt worked as slaves all day? Pharaoh would not let good food or comforts come their way. So many people believe that these great pyramids that we learned about during Simple Machines Week were created by slaves. And those were the slaves that, when we talk about slaves, we know that those are people that are not paid, they're not treated well, and they're basically treated not like people, which is wrong no matter what. The sun beat down. The Jews cried out, but he would not relent. He didn't even change his mind when 10 grave plagues were sent. So this is the story of Moses. So if we remember, Moses went to the Pharaoh and told Pharaoh that God told him he needed to let the Jews go. And of course, Pharaoh said, no, right? And so God said, I'm going to prove to Pharaoh that I am stronger than he is and that he will listen to Moses. And so he sent 10 plagues, each one worse than the last. Plagues such as locust, hail in the middle of the day. It was night all day. All of the, here are the locusts, you can see here, frogs everywhere, and illness. And then finally, after the 9th plague, God said, I need to teach Pharaoh what we're doing, and I need to, get him to change his mind. And so he sent down an angel, and that angel took the life of all the firstborn sons of Egypt, but spared all of the sons of the Jews. And the way that the angel knew is because the Jews put a red mark above their door, and then the angel passed over. And that's why this holiday is called Passover, because the angel spared the Jews. After that, finally, Pharaoh did give in. The Jews ran to the sea, and as the salty waters parted, they at last were free. But we remember that we don't really trust Pharaoh, do we? When Pharaoh realized that they were leaving and that he was going to lose his free work and his people, he said he went to go and chase them. And Moses took his staff and he stood in front of the Red Sea. And he parted the Red Sea with his staff and of the miracle of God. And the Jews were able to escape across the bottom of the sea. And they were able to escape into the desert to freedom. But as we read through history, both recent and long past, we see some rulers who chose not to let this freedom last. Now, this is a slightly different part of the story. This is much later on when Jews were in Jerusalem. Twice the temple was destroyed by Babylon and then Rome. Many Jews were sold as slaves or left without a home. And so quite often they would, I can't tell you why people are mean to each other, kids, but I can tell you that in history God has protected people who believe in him and people who are good, and he does that here. In Spain, 500 years ago, the king made it a crime for Jews to pray in public or at home at any time. Happened quite often. While there were some who told the king they would obey his laws, in secret some Marranos prayed as Jews when no one saw. So this has happened throughout history. Christians and Jews alike are sometimes told they can't worship God. And we know even the disciples were sometimes told that they should worship another God, or they should worship those individual gods that some people liked. And they said, no, there is only one God. Again, in World War II, there was a very evil man who tried to take away our freedom with a vicious plan. Jews were told they could not come to shul to learn and pray, which is school for Jews. Guards and soldiers took their books and Torah scrolls away. The Torah is the Old Testament in the Bible, and they took away their Bibles. They could not spend Shabbat or Yom Tov singing songs out loud. Not a single sign of Jewish culture was allowed. Now, Shabbat and Yom Tov are two examples of holidays that Jewish people celebrate, and they were not able to, certainly not Passover, like Jesus was. More recently in Russia and in other countries too, Jews were told they couldn't teach the Jewish laws they knew. But many of these Jews escaped to find a better life. Other countries offered freedom from religious strife. See that country right there? What country's that, first grade? That's us. Because we believe here that you can worship the God that you choose. You can go to a school like St. Dominic's School and you can worship Jesus. What a blessing. And as they left, as years before, when Jews fled Pharaoh's land, it seemed as if a tambourine played songs from Miriam's hand. So do you remember Miriam? So Miriam was in the Old Testament with Moses, and when they were able to escape, and they were able to move into the desert, and they had many great successes out there as well as hardships, she was known for playing her tambourine and for celebrating. And so it's almost like every time we get to celebrate, it's like Miriam is playing that tambourine for us. They now could pray like other Jews, most anywhere at all, at a local shul or even at the Western Wall, which is a beautiful wall where you can pray in Jerusalem. What a joy to know it's safe for everyone to meet, to dance around the Torah, and to march out in the street. And what a wondrous miracle on Hanukkah each night to see the candles in the window burning proud and bright. Now, we spoke about Hanukkah when we did our study in December. How fortunate we are when at the market or the store to find gefilte fish and matzah and macaroons and more. Matzah is the flat bread that Jews eat during Passover. And they eat this because they had to escape Egypt so quickly that they couldn't wait for the bread to rise. And so the bread they brought with them was flat. And they honor that flight and that freedom by eating flatbread during the days of Passover. And we are very lucky at the Seder every year to sit with friends and family, relaxed and free from fear. So here are some of the foods that they will eat during the Seder, perhaps even some of these foods that Jesus ate during his last meal, his Seder meal. We have roasted egg, greens, bitter herb, shank bone, charoset, and hazaret. Now I'm going to tell you, Mrs. Smith, she really likes something called potato pancakes, which is something that they eat on Passover as well. We can sing and pray and read and celebrate all night. Freedom of religion is a very special right. And we as Catholics also celebrate that. So as you raise your Kiddush cup or join along in song, be grateful for this freedom you can cherish all year long. Now I know that Jesus celebrated his freedom as a Jew, and that's why they had that last meal, that Seder meal. And so we are deeply intertwined as people who believe in Jesus with the stories of the Bible in the Old Testament, or the Jewish part of the Jewish Bible, where they tell these stories, and we learn about Moses and how Jesus was actually in the line of Moses. Think about him as like great grandfather. And that's how I just wanted you to learn a little bit about Passover today. So I hope you've had a good Monday and Tuesday, and that you are well and that you're having fun. And I just wanted to tell each of you that I've really enjoyed reading your animal projects thus far, and I'm super proud of all of you. No matter what, proud of you. See you soon.